This is Your Own Best Company, a podcast and community for creative people who value and enjoy working alone. Hello, everyone. I'm Franklin Taggart, and this is Your Own Best Company, a podcast for people who love to work alone. And my guest today is a new acquaintance, but somebody I've been familiar with in professional circles for the last few years, named Cindy Skalicky.
Good.
I always want to make sure that I get that. It's Skalicky, right?
You got it. Skalicky. That's right.
I have to think Chicago when you do that, because you are from Chicago, and that's how people in Chicago would say Skalicky.
Yeah, that's probably true. I've never lived in Chicago as a Skalicky, though, so I would not know.
So if you were in like southern Indiana, it would be Skalicky and all those kinds of things.
Oh, I've heard it all. That's right.
Well, I was happy to land on it. Cindy's an expert in rhetorical theory, or otherwise known as the science of persuasion, which I think we could probably do like 13 episodes just on that.
Yeah, we could.
Her passion lies in taking a message in and teasing it apart to determine the overall effectiveness and persuasiveness. She helps clients understand the power of persuasion by teaching Aristotle's hidden gem of genius, something that you're going to be learning today, called the rhetorical triangle. Cindy is originally from Chicago. She's been a diehard Cubs fan since her youth, something that I share with her, and is raising 4 children ranging in age from 12 to 18. She deserves a Medal of Honor. And she has coerced her only son to love 80s music almost as much as she does. She and her husband will celebrate 19 years of marriage this year, and they have lived in Fort Collins, Colorado since 2007. Cindy, thank you so much for being my guest today. I am delighted that we finally connected after all of these years of circling each other in the circles we're in. First things first, you are the only person that I've ever met who has a degree in rhetoric.
Oh.
I've never met anyone else who's gone that far with it. Now, talk to me a little bit about how did that even happen?
Yes. Well, and I actually, turns out I have 2 degrees in rhetoric. One is an undergrad and one is a graduate degree. And the story of how it happened is a good one. I'm from Illinois. I started my undergrad career actually at Illinois State University for 2.5 years. Okay. And in the middle of my junior year, I just wasn't feeling it. I thought I need more challenge. And so I took a risk and left in the middle of that year and went to St. Mary's College at Notre Dame in Indiana. And I met a professor there who really did put me on this trajectory. His name's Dr. Pauly, and he's still a very good friend of mine. And I had just decided to go into communication studies as a new major when I went to school there. It was in the spring, so January. So I joined in Dr. Pauly's first class on rhetorical criticism. And here was our first assignment. We had he gave us the 1992 commencement address of Hillary Rodham Clinton from Wellesley College. Mm-hmm. And we got the script, and the assignment was, because we had just learned Aristotle's rhetorical theory, his triangle, the assignment was to determine to make an argument. Do you think this was an effective rhetorical act or not? Why or why not? Use Aristotle's rhetorical triangle as support for your answer. So I, went down to the basement of the library at St. Mary's and just started at it. I was like, oh man, I got this. Let's go. Right. So I began to evaluate her speech through the lens of Aristotle, and I was in heaven. I just loved it. So that's called rhetorical criticism. It's the practice of bringing a critique or analysis to a piece of persuasion, which is a rhetorical act in the formal term. And so that is what I did. And when I started to get further into my classes, Dr. Pauly just really helped me see that I was pretty good at this and I loved it. And so he has pushed me in many parts of my career, actually, even beyond college, to go after this. He's the reason I have a master's degree. And, so that's the start of how I was introduced to this, because I didn't really know what it was called that I loved to do.
Yeah. So your company's called On Point Communications, and you use what you've learned through all of this work to help people to become better communicators, both on stage and otherwise. Talk a little bit about what drew you into that direction.
So in my early career, I worked for a big 5 ad agency in Chicago, and then I went to graduate school and I did public speaking and I taught, and I thought I wanted to go on to the PhD and become an academic at Dr. Pauly's prodding. It turns out I discovered, all that insular quiet time that your audience loves is a little too much for me as a lifelong academic. So I happened to meet my husband while I was there, and I said, let's get out of Georgia. And I went to a PR firm in DC. And then I took this long break from like my career path, and I had the children that we have. And truth be told, Franklin, I just really never thought I was going to go back into a career path. So but I ended up doing that in 2015. My youngest daughter was in first grade in all-day school. And I thought, let me go get a part-time job. So I went out looking for a part-time job with a master's degree in rhetoric, and everybody turned me down. They're like, what are you doing at the front office of the gym? And I was like, well, I thought I could get a gym membership on top of it, and then we're all winning, right? There's my angle. Well, anyway, I ended up having a coffee with a woman who does presentation skills coaching.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, you can do this for a living and people will pay for this? Like, where do I sign? And so honestly, before I even left that coffee, she said, I'm a presentation skills coach, but I'm not above getting one, because I have a TEDx talk next month and I really want to nail that. Will you coach me? Yeah. And I said, yes, I will. And I had no idea what I was going to do with her, but I was like, let's do it. So yeah, I had no company for her to write a check to, no way for, no name for my company. And that's how I started. It was really kind of an accident.
So that was what, about 10 years ago?
That was almost 6. So that happened in September of 2015.
All right. So, and it just took off from there.
Well, yeah, until last year. Yeah. I was doubling my revenue year after year. My referral base was ridiculously strong. I had done no outside, outbound advertising. I got good at LinkedIn and figured out how to do that pretty well. My first cold call came from Microsoft, which was pretty fun. I was like, well, that's cool. Okay. And so I did work with them early. And I ended up, honestly, though, I almost threw in the towel last year, Franklin. Yeah. I was actively, looking during COVID, right? I was actively looking for full-time work. Yeah. I said, I don't know if I can sustain this. My family's needs have changed and I do need to be at a full-time clip. And 5 years in, got my resume shined up, was making it into final rounds of interviews, and almost closed the door.
Wow. Yeah, this really caught us all by surprise, didn't it?
It did.
And so many people were also faced with the same decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that you made it through.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Were you able to find some things to get you through that, ultimately, that allowed you to stay in business?
This might resonate with your audience if they're kind of early or have been at it a little while, but people told me a lot. That 5-year mark, something's going to turn and you're either going to make it or you're not going to make it. And I mean, the 1-year mark is a big one too, but 5 years I was told, and I've read, is a make it or break it, go, no go.
Yeah.
I am not kidding you. Like the end of September is the week of my anniversary of starting. And that week was when things began to pick up. So I didn't do anything special to
Yeah.
get the motor going. The people that had to drop me for budget reasons and COVID reasons now had figured out how to do all the Zoom stuff. So they were bringing me back and doing all these workshops and all the trainings that I used to provide for them regularly on Zoom. And so and then I got a couple of new assignments and new sales that were bigger and broader that kept me afloat. And then I just kept going. I really don't know what it was. It just happened.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I'm excited about our time together today, Cindy, is that you have some tools to share with people. But before we get into that, I wanted to mention that one of the things that I want to encourage people to do is to find you on LinkedIn and to join your email list. Because more than anything else, I mean, they're always great messages, but one of the things that I've looked at is every time that I've opened one of your emails, I've learned something about writing a better email.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
And so I want to encourage people to look you up on LinkedIn because you also share really valuable content on LinkedIn as well. One of the things that you shared today really struck me. And I just feel like that you're offering a lot of value wherever you show up. And I want people to engage wherever they can find you. I also wanted to mention that you've got the YouTube series that people can find where you're interviewing different types of leaders and professionals and really getting into the core of good communication and good messaging. So I want to encourage people to look you up in all of those places. We'll have links for you.
I would love. Yeah, I would love those folks to let me know that they listened to this. When they send me your connection request, drop Franklin's name so I know, and that would just be fun. Like I just would love to see how that goes. Yeah, the little interview show that I do is called Getting to the Point, and we crank out 3 points of the expert that's with me on the show.
Yeah,
30 minutes or less, and we're done. So yeah, I would love to meet more of your audience. So
wonderful program, and it's worth signing up for, folks.
Yeah.
The other thing that before we go any further, I wanted to mention that your website is onpoint-communications.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not hyphen spelled out; it's just a hyphen.
Yep. So dash. Yeah.
onpoint-communications or onpoint-communications.com.
Yep.
Is where you can find more direct information about Cindy, what she's up to. I asked you to bring something to us today that would be something that would help people to improve their communications and their messaging. And you brought forth an idea that I'm intrigued by because it was not something that I have actually ever studied, but it sounds fascinating. And that is it's a tool called the rhetorical triangle. You said it was originally developed by Aristotle?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about this particular device.
Yes, I will. So in order to talk about his triangle, we need to talk a little bit about Aristotle because he was a genius in so many ways. But one of the things that Aristotle loved to do was be an audience member and evaluate messaging. So and he was a real student of persuasion. And so his thing was to sit and watch people get up and speak, usually like civic discourse back then, right, was what we were listening to, or he was listening to. And he really asked the same questions of himself that I shared at the beginning of this episode. Was that an effective rhetorical act or not? And let's sit there for a second. It means, the speaker, and if you're listening and you're going to get on a stage or have a conversation with someone soon and you want to persuade them, he would watch a speaker approach that stage, knowing that the speaker had intention, right? Knowing that the speaker had something that he or she wanted to accomplish by the end. Yeah. And so the setup is, okay, we know every speaker gets up there with intention, or they should. Did they do it? Did they do it? And then he would sit there and he would say, how did they do it? How, like actually how did they persuade the audience to believe something new, buy something new, vote a certain way, or whatever the ask at the end was?
Yeah.
He took that speaker or a puzzle or message puzzle and tore it apart and said, okay, this puzzle piece over here has to do with vocal variety because that needs to be good. This piece here has to do with how you move around on the stage. This piece here is a story piece. You have to have a good story. Does that story relate to the audience? So all these things, make up his rhetorical toolbox. So in the end, he kind of turned that into that rhetorical triangle shape. So that's kind of the setup. Does that land?
Yes.
Okay. So if everybody could think about a triangle, an equilateral triangle, or draw one on your paper right now. At the top, we have S for speaker, and at the lower left, we have A for audience, and on the right, we have M for message. So in Greek terms, we're going to match those all to Greek terms. So S for speaker matches ethos or credibility. Okay. A for audience matches the Greek term pathos, emotion, heart. Your message has to have heart, has to get the audience to care. And then the M for message is logos or reason or logic. You have to have a logical flow to your message. So let's kind of go one at a time if that's okay. We'll kind of go one at a time through those. So as for speaker, so when you think about a speaker, you need to you have to understand they are trying to gain credibility when they get on the stage, because otherwise they can't really get trust and believability from the audience, right? How do you evaluate a speaker for credibility? Well, you want to believe them, like them, know them, trust them. How do you do that? Well, if you're listening to this, there are kind of two ways to do this. You can build credibility before you get on the stage, and you can build it while you're on the stage. So before you get on the stage, and I'm using stage loosely, right? Before you disseminate your message, how's your personal brand? How are you showing up? That is credibility. You need to have a really strong personal brand. You need to share where you've studied. Like, what do you know? Like, what are you about? What have you done to strengthen your expertise? So there's a whole host of things a speaker does before even opening their mouth to build credibility. Now, once you start talking, you need to keep that credibility high and continue to elevate that just through a lot of your it's through your content that you're delivering. It's through your nonverbals. Are you shying away from your slide deck? Are you too quiet? Are you fiddling? Do you have a lot of filler words like so? That will quickly, reduce your credibility. How do you answer questions at the end? Do you know what you're talking about? So that in a nutshell is speaker. That's, let's always remember from the moment we walk into a room, we are credible or not, or perceived as such, right?
One of the things that you mentioned in your LinkedIn post today, you were talking about a client of yours that you helped fill a last-minute 5-minute talk, or something like that. And you were talking about how you helped him help the person who was introducing him to take care of the credibility factor. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yes. So this is so important. I'm going to share it. This person was getting up on the stage for 5 minutes at a conference, and he is like the commercial in between the bigger events. So, not super important, but a time for him to shine if he could. I said, well, who's introducing you to the audience? He said, well, I'm not sure. I think it's this guy. I said, have you given him your introduction? He's like, well, I sent over a bio. Well, I'm like, well, if that bio is 2 or 3 paragraphs, they're not going to read all of that. So everybody listening, if you are ever introduced by someone else, give them 2 to 3 short sentences about you. Let them introduce you. Let them prop you up and give you that credibility, and be sure that those 2 to 3 sentences really are powerful. And then you don't have to work as hard. It's actually a beautiful thing to walk onto a stage when someone else has told how awesome you are. So that is the tip that I gave today at LinkedIn.
It was wonderful. Yeah, it was right on target. Very helpful to me anyway.
Good.
Moving right along then, we're still talking about the speaker corner of the triangle.
We are. I think we're going to wrap up the speaker part by just saying that it's important to remember everything you do counts. And, it's not always about perfection. Authenticity matters and is something people want and are looking for, as is vulnerability. So again, we could do 30 episodes on this whole triangle, like you said. So let's go to audience. This is the weakest link of the triangle because, we are the speaker, we are giving the message, we are not our audience. So it makes sense. That's the weakest link. But the same thing, you can do homework on your audience before you get on the stage, and you need to be interacting with them from the stage. So before you get on the stage or do your thing, you should be researching any or all of them. I have been known to ask organizers, can I please have a list of the attendees who are coming to my workshop? I promise not to sell to them or add them to my email list. I want to learn who they are. And so usually I get a yes, and I print it out. I go one by one to whoever I can find. I find out a little about what their work is, and then I fill my content with examples that will hit them right between the eyes. Yeah. And I'll say, I know some of you work in XYZ industry, or some of you have small teams and some of you have whatever, so something to help connect you. This also reduces your fears. If you start learning who's out there, they are not these giant, scary monster people who we all think are going to throw things at us. They're not, right? Yeah. So learn your audience, learn about what they do, where they live, but also how they might think about what you're going to say. How are they going to receive your information? Where are they in their business development? What are their problems? What are they having a hard time doing that you might be able to help them with? And how can you meet them where they are in your messaging? So that's the before you can do. During, probably the number one tip I'll leave about during your talk is don't talk at them. Talk to them. Yeah. You might think, well, what's the difference? Well, talking at people is no fun. It's very reporter style. It's a delivery of a bunch of facts. It's very informational. I could probably pick up an article and just read it and have the same information as I did from the end of your talk. Talking to your audience means simple things like using I, you language, or we, or asking rhetorical questions like, well, I bet you wonder how I got started with my endeavor. Well, let me tell you, talk to them like they're really there wanting to know. And no, they're not going to answer you, but they are in their heads, and they're really happy when you actually acknowledge them and think about what they're thinking. Yeah. So involving them through other things like polls or raising hands or chiming in, those are just really important. And of course, the glaring obvious thing, eye contact, right? Yeah. Look at them, engage them. If they're bored, if they're looking at their phones, pick up the pace, figure out what you need to do in the moment, and try to have your message so locked that you can do that. And you're not tied to your script or your, formulaic presentation of the message.
Cindy, I'm curious about one thing.
Yeah.
With the type of research that you do, where you actually find out who your audience is ahead of time and you go and find out as much as you can about them, do you recognize their faces when you get up on stage?
I certainly try to. Yeah. I've also linked with them in advance on LinkedIn. I just say, I really try to do some touch point with an audience before I grace the stage. Okay. I will go through that list and say, hey, Joe, I'm really looking forward to meeting you tomorrow. It's very surface, very nothing, just a drop like, hello, I'm excited to meet you and do the training tomorrow. See you in the morning. That's it. And then I'll just go, and then I try to pick a couple people maybe that I want to talk to after, or because they're aligned in a certain way with me, or I'm curious. So yes, I definitely try. It's time consuming, of course, but it's very worthwhile because that's how you bring the value that's beyond other people who just have a canned speech.
Well, that's just it. You've done all the connecting work ahead of time.
People love it. I mean,
It's amazing.
I send out welcome videos to large groups that I'm like, here's a 1-minute video of me, just, so they can hear my voice and see how I move and see what I'm about and hear my tone of voice. And I just say, welcome. I'm so excited to do this half-day training with you all tomorrow. Bring your paper, bring your pencil, bring your questions, bring your coffee. I'll see you then. It's just simple, but it's just a connection point that does matter. So, I like to do that. I think it makes it more fun for me too. It kind of calms my nerves, if I'm being honest. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. What a great tip.
Yeah,
I can imagine that it just makes a huge difference in the whole experience. I'm embarrassed to say that I've never actually gone that far before. And the times that I've presented, and it's like I can, so much of the initial things that I work on in my presentation are the connecting pieces, and you're already doing that before the fact. I love that.
Well, if you don't do that, people will often just get up and leave because they don't want to wait in line, even if they like what you said. But if you've started a rapport before that, they're likely to stop you, and because they feel like they know you a little bit and you're not a stranger. And if people listening are like, well, I don't do that. I don't talk to big crowds. I don't this does not apply to me. I would beg to differ and say, even if you have a call with someone the next day that's set up a week ago in your calendar, drop one line and say, hey, Sarah, I noticed your post yesterday. It really hit me where I need to focus on, and I'm just looking forward to our call in the morning. That's all. Just like wake them up a little, right? So it can work in small situations too.
So what else do we need to say about the A? Are we on the A still, or are we done with the A?
No, I think we're done with A. One thing I'll close with maybe there is to say that when you are in the audience listening to other speakers, you can become a better speaker. And all you need to do is watch and learn and listen, like I did with that Hillary Rodham Clinton address. Look at them, watch them, be Aristotle, be me. Think about what you like and what you don't like. You kind of have to float above yourself to be really aware of what's keeping you interested and what's not, and why. And then you can say, I'm going to copy that technique, or I'm definitely not going to go on and on about that because this person's on this slide for 4 minutes and I'm bored and I can't read the graph, or whatever you're learning about how other people present. You can do a lot of that from the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to M and close up our triangle here with message. Message is logos, or reason, and it kind of has two parts, just like the other pieces of the triangle. So, before you get up and deliver a message, obviously you have to craft it really well. And that has to do with, logical flow of your message. And what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're going to put a story into your presentation somewhere, you need to think about where it's best suited to put it. Should you start with a story? Hint, hint. Yes, you should. Should you pepper your talk with stories? Maybe. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. Do you want to drop a case study somewhere? Okay, that's a great idea. Well, where should it go? If it starts at the beginning, you're going to look too thirsty and hungry. You should probably save it for now that you know me and we've talked about the problem, let me show you how I did this cool thing for someone who was just like you in your shoes. And I'm just throwing out kind of some examples, but that's what I mean by logical flow. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people, they just have things in the wrong places. They're really close to having a strong script or slide deck, but they just need to move things around. Yeah. And that part, it just takes a little bit of time and practice. But once you start to get the hang of that, it's kind of fun. And so a model I teach has to do with how to craft a pitch deck or a presentation along the 5-point story arc. And that's the how-to method that I do with some of my, longer term advanced clients. And this rhetorical triangle, it's the anchor to the whole model. It sits right underneath it as a foundation, which is really fun and it fits, just kind of perfectly. So once you get your message where you want it, it's time to start delivering it really well. And I mean, I could go on and on about the importance of rehearsing, but even if it's just a short, elevator pitch or partnership conversation or collaborative, discussion, if you're nervous about how you want to come across, start practicing even just a few sentences that have just the right words in just the right places, and then practice saying them out loud. Yeah. One thing I know is true for me, we might think we've got it all, right up here, and that it's going to come out of our mouths just the way we want it to. But my goodness, that's just not true. So I can see so often that really getting the words out of your mouth and practicing the sentence structure, it illuminates so much. And it's usually a couple of things. One is that your sentences are too long.
Yeah.
Guaranteed your sentences are too long. We should not speak the way that we write. No. My blog post today, if I was telling that as a story, probably would tell it even shorter. We need sound bites. We need simple words too. So throw out all those multisyllabic words and acronyms, unless they're super, easy to figure out or your audience knows them, and make it simple. So when you're on the stage, so you've got to show that you have mastery of that message, and that comes through rehearsing. That comes through strong slide decks. Pro tip, 25 words on a slide, everybody, or less. Okay. Get rid of the academic looking bulleted stuff and pack it with images instead. Yeah. Trust me on that one. It forces you to know your message, but guess what? You should know your message and you should master it and not be reliant on your deck as much as maybe you are. Yeah. So that is touching on message. There's a lot more we could do with that, but I see a lot of the same mistakes with that, and so I just keep teaching it. Just keep going, and I know it takes time, to get some of these habits nailed down, but man, it works when you get it really tight. And there's just nothing like feeling on top of everything in this triangle when you get up on that stage, when you feel competent, confident. You've done your due diligence on your audience, and you know what they're going to like, where they might laugh, that the story is the right one. Yeah. And then your message, you love your slide deck. It's beautiful. You can't wait to show it to everyone. And then you're just on fire. And then you get this, wonderful round of applause at the end, and a line of people waiting to talk with you or email you or chat with you after the Zoom, and some of us are still so virtual, of course. It's amazing. And it's all worthwhile to spend the time on the messaging in this way.
Well, with all of the different TED Talks and Ignite programs and things like that, it just seems like to me that, speaking is still in a very explosive phase in terms of popularity. So you're in the right field at the right time, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, to kind of hook back to the fact that I almost quit last summer, the great irony is that now I'm in a place where the whole world has not presented in person in 18 months. You know what that makes my market slide look like? Total addressable market, 6 billion.
the gross realization, oh my God, I need a new headshot and a new suit. Oh my God.
Right. Well, and the great irony too, of course, being that no one liked public speaking anyway before the pandemic. So, it's comical almost how much people need this help because they're rusty and now they're scared times 10. Whereas, before it was like regular fear, now it's ultra. So we just need to take baby steps, you guys. Everybody just needs baby steps. So when you're invited to say, would anyone like to introduce themselves today to this meeting if you're new? The answer for you should always be yes. It should always be yes. I would love to share a little about myself. And that's where you guys, you write on a sticky note exactly what you're going to say, and you stick it next to the pinhole of your computer screen and you read it until you've memorized it and you know it. But speaking from any platform, Zoom or otherwise, it is the number one best way to market yourself, hands down.
Yeah.
So get going on your speaking 1 week, one step at a time.
Definitely something to get comfortable with. Now, you've got a couple of things that you've offered for folks. There's one called the Reflect and Expect exercise. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Sure. The Reflect and Expect exercise is the precursor survey that I do with really all of my clients, no matter what engagement we're starting. But it allows you to reflect on your past speaking experience, what you think of it, what others have told you about it, what you think others might say if I asked them, hey, how's Susan's public speaking skills? Where would you kind of rank that? So you reflect on your journey of public speaking up until this point, and you set some goals. The expectation part is let's set some expectations. What are 2 things you want to improve about your skill set with me? And what are two things you're already good at that I should know that I can elevate? Because when I find someone's strengths, I will use those I'll find them eventually, but if you know them and I can see them right away, all the better.
Very good. You also have an offer here for a rehearsal call. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. That is the dip your toe in and see what Cindy really knows exercise. And it's a rehearsal session with me. And it's really fun. It's get in, get out, get better, guaranteed. We do 45 minutes of a rehearsal of whatever message you want to bring into the Zoom call. I record the whole call, and there's so much value in listening back to yourself. And then you don't need to take notes about my feedback. You can just listen. I leave you with 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, and 3 specific things to do with your slides or your script to enhance it. And then you're off and running with at least something that you can use to polish your message and yourself. So that is a great way to get some last minute coaching. Your message does not need to be perfect. It can be, hey, Cindy, this is where it is. And I say, great, let's look at it now. I always want to say that because I think people are so fearful when that Zoom call starts. And I say, bring me something decent, but I don't expect perfection. That's why you're here. So let's noodle it together and get it to the finish line.
So we'll have links for both of those in the description of this show. The rehearsal call, what is the cost of that?
That is $250 just for the call. I also have a package that's $495 that's a little more robust that includes the on-ramp exercise of the intake plus a 30-minute call after the rehearsal to talk about summary and insights. And that's kind of the package level A. And then there's plenty others that go up from there. So
it's a bargain.
Yeah, right.
So folks, if you want Cindy to help you get your presentation ready for the stage or the Zoom call or whatever your venue is going to be, make sure that you get in touch with her. I'll post both of those links in the description. And again, the website is onpoint-communications.org or no, .com.
.com. Yeah.
Beg your pardon there. onpoint-communications.com.
There you go.
Don't forget the hyphen or the dash, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Cindy, this has been so much fun. I'm so sorry that we have to end now.
I know. Me too.
We just got started.
I know. There's so much more to say, but I'm glad to have shared that triangle. People, you can find that at my LinkedIn featured section. I've got several little videos about that shape, and you can actually see the design that I had a designer do for me about that, so it sticks a little better. But people have just loved having a framework and really understanding that there is a theory around this stuff we all do. I mean, everyone's using this triangle every day, all the time. Are you doing it well, though? And where do you need to grow is the question for you today.
Oh, being aware of it's going to change everything.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much. And folks, be sure to look up Cindy when you are in need of help with your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And we're going to find another reason for you to come back, Cindy. I don't think we need to look very far, but
no, just need some more time. I'd love that. That'd be wonderful. Thank you, Franklin. This has been a lot of fun.
People who work alone aren't antisocial, at least not most of us. If people think you're weird because you don't want to grow a big company and you'd rather spend most of your time working by yourself, you're just hanging around the wrong people. Your Own Best Company has a Facebook group that you're invited to join right now. We understand the urge to close the door, let your imagination run wild, and stay there until your creative impulse runs its course. We also understand the features and challenges that go along with running a business to support our solo flight lifestyles. Joining the group is free, and it's as easy as clicking the link in the channel description. So go there now and just join the group. Want to hear more where this came from? Subscribe to Your Own Best Company on your favorite podcast app or on the Franklin Taggart Coaching and Consulting YouTube channel. To get in touch with Franklin, send an email to yobc@franklintaggart.com. Thanks for listening.